In the room for tonight's hearing, by the way, some faces you may recognize as those who tried to defend the Capitol during the insurrection, like Harry Dunn, a Capitol police officer who testified publicly early on in the committee's investigation about what he experienced. Dunn will be in the room, accompanied by the partners of 3 officers who lost their lives in the aftermath of January 6th, including the wife of the D.C. Metro police officer we just mentioned, Jeffrey Smith. His death, again, ruled a line of duty death after the insurrection. I want to bring in now his wife, Erin Smith, her attorney, David Weber, both joining me here on set. Thank you both so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
Erin, I know that you had the opportunity just now to basically listen in to the arraignment for Walls Kaufman. Why did you want to do that?
It's a step in the right direction of hopefully, he's being charged with these charges now and hopefully more to come.
I was going to ask you about that because these charges here are misdemeanors related to his entry into the Capitol. They don't address the interaction that Walls Kaufman had with your husband. Are you disappointed in that?
The Justice Department knows what they're doing. I trust them. And hopefully, the truth will come out, and whether that's more charges or not, we'll find out.
David, why is it important for you and for Erin to look for justice and to seek accountability both civilly and criminally?
I think that one of the most important pieces of this case is that Jeff, Erin's husband, is the first person that we're aware of that's ever been ruled a line of duty death based on a silent injury, meaning that he suffered a traumatic brain injury. And Erin has had to fight for almost 18 months to have that recognition given to her. The District of Columbia.
It only happened in March.
Right. It only happened on March 7th. There is now a bill pending in the Senate. It's already cleared the House that on a federal level would include local and state law enforcement officers and federal law enforcement officers who suffer similar experiences to Jeff. So she's calling for the Senate to vote on that. It cleared the House 402 to 12, and it just passed the Senate Judiciary Committee unanimously. So that's part of her mission in this, is that other widows and widowers and children never have to go through what the Smith family has gone through.
I want to ask you more about that in a minute, Erin, but I have to ask you about tonight because, as we mentioned, you're going to be there. You're attending,
yes.
Right? We know, based on what we've heard from members of the committee and from our reporting, that there will be some intense footage shown, potentially some graphic stuff. And I imagine for you it is going to be reliving the trauma from that day. Given that, why is it important for you? Why did you decide that you wanted to be in that hearing room tonight?
I think it's important to show that even though some of the officers are no longer with us, they're still here. We still represent them as, I represent Jeff as his widow. The others do as well. And just to show that, he gave his life for that day.
What do you want Americans to get out of tonight?
I hope that those that are still skeptical believe what really happened. We all saw it take place live. We know what happened, and the truth will come out.
You mentioned people who are skeptical. There are still, as you know, people out there who cast doubt on the activities, on the actions that happened on the day of the insurrection. Do you think they could be convinced with what they see tonight as it relates to what your husband went through and what other officers went through?
I don't know. You can only hope so.
Yeah. I wanted you to tell us a little bit more about Jeff because you've talked about him before, and he seemed like a funny guy, lighthearted. I think you've described him as a jokester before. Tell me how you're thinking about him and remembering him today.
He was a great husband, a great police officer, a great son, uncle, friend. He was just an overall good person.
Dog father.
He also loved his dog and cars, but he was just a fun person to be around, and he really just enjoyed life.
And January 6th changed him.
It did.
Yeah. And he was never, obviously, the same. Has the committee reached out to you at all about speaking publicly as a witness in any of the hearings coming up?
They have not.
Would you do that if they asked?
Yes.
Would you encourage her to do that?
And I do need to say there's been a lot of moving pieces in the last 48 hours. There is discussion of Erin testifying if, as, and when they ask.
I see.
She is.
Let me just clarify, David. Discussion from the committee about Erin speaking.
Correct.
Okay.
She is tonight. She is meeting with the staff director of the committee, who's going to bring her into the hearing room, and the committee will decide if they need her testimony. But if they do, Erin is willing to cooperate with the inquiry.
Tell me why and what you want people to hear, given if you do have the opportunity to speak to, a huge portion of the country in one of these high-profile hearings.
I think they need to know what an officer went through that's no longer here with us. They've heard from ones that are still here, and the ones that aren't have a story as well.
Yeah. David mentioned your advocacy on behalf of other partners, spouses. We know some of them, obviously, will be with you tonight in this hearing. I think of Officer Liebengood, for example, who died by suicide also in the days after January 6th. And his death, so far as I know, still has not been ruled a line-of-duty death. Talk about this sort of mission that you're on now, this fight that you're taking on behalf of other women like you.
So the main goal is to get departments to recognize that a death by suicide can be correlated to the job. It can be a line-of-duty death. And departments need to recognize that and understand that they can't just brush these types of deaths under the rug, and they need to be investigated and they need to be designated correctly.
Is that what you worried about, that Jeff's death would be brushed under the rug?
Yes.
Is there a sense of relief after this designation and that he is, you are going to be in the room tonight, his story will be told, you might potentially be a witness testifying at one of the upcoming hearings?
It's just to get people to understand that no matter how they died, they still served their department, their city, their state.
I can tell that this is emotional for you. This is a tough day. I mean, it's been a tough year and a half, I know. But can you tell me what today's been like for you and what you're sort of bracing for as you walk into that room tonight?
It's been quite stressful, but it's part of the process. It's seeing things through, and it's just another step in the right direction.
Do you think about accountability?
I do.
In what sense?
At the end of the day, things don't happen without somebody being responsible. So whether it's one person or multiple people.
How high up do you think that accountability should go?
That's really not for me to decide, but I think the truth will come out.
What do you hope Jeff's legacy will be?
That he saved democracy on January 6th, and that he was a part of a group of men and women that went in there not knowing what they were going to face, and they did their job, and they came out on the other side.
David, as Erin shares the story, as she shares more about her husband and what a great, incredible person he was and how this change happened after January 6th, what do you hope from sort of the legal perspective, if you will, from the argument that the committee is looking to lay out, that people take away from this?
Erin and I are mainly here to seek justice for Jeff and to advocate both for Erin and Jeff's family and all the future families that should never have to go through what Erin went through. It's hard to appreciate how much of a fight we had to learn what happened to Jeff that day.
Explain that.
When Erin was first notified of Jeff's death, they told her that it was a motor vehicle accident. And then several hours later, they told her that he had shot himself. And it was not recognized as a line-of-duty death. And they declined to provide us the body cam. They declined to give us any of the evidence. And and Erin knew from that night, because Jeff was injured, and Jeff told her that he had been injured. And so she knew that something happened that had changed him, because he wasn't the same man. He wasn't the same dog father. And the first piece of physical evidence that we received was Jeff's autopsy. And Jeff had fractures on his face. And those fractures, our position, our lawsuit, and our expert, who is the former chief medical examiner of Washington, D.C., is that those fractures are from the assaults that he faced on January 6th. And based on ultimately getting the body camera footage, we were able to see what happened to him, including that he was knocked unconscious. And our experts, of whom we have two, say that what you can see on the body cam is him suffering a concussion. And we can support that because we have the x-rays of his face. And we know from our endless war in the Middle East that concussion can lead to suicide. And the military rules approximately 90% of line-of-duty suicides to be line-of-duty deaths. And local and state government law enforcement has not followed that science. And so what we're trying to do is advance the science and advance the law so that nobody has to go through what Erin went through.
Erin,
she had to hire a private lawyer to conduct the investigation. The person charged today, the FBI's charging documents reference Erin's lawsuit as part of the basis for the criminal charges. It was the work that these folks who helped us identify these gentlemen, not the Bureau, that figured out what happened to Jeff that day.
I should note that in the civil portion of this, Wells Kaufman's attorneys have obviously taken exception with the lawsuit and the claims that you're making. Erin, before we go, I want to give you the final word here because it feels like it's just been a heavy day. You know, the arraignment today that you wanted to listen into, that you felt it was important to listen into, what you're about to experience in 4 hours from now when you walk into that room at the Capitol complex, the place where your husband changed forever. Can you give us some insight into where you are at this moment in your journey and what you want people to know?
Right now, we're still working on all the pieces. The end goal is to make sure that no one else has to go through the same things that I've had to go through to get to this point. And at the end, I hope that Jeff's name is inscribed on the Law Enforcement Memorial Wall right here in D.C.
Erin Smith, thank you so much for being with us and for coming to the studio and for talking with me. I appreciate it. David Weber, thank you as well. I appreciate it.